Hi guys, this is Max. I am the Assistant Liquor Department Manager at Hazel's Beverage World, and I'm joined here today by Kelly from Hotaling Co. They are an importer of some very fine spirits, including the whiskeys you see here today. What do you have for us today, Kelly?
We've got Writer's Tears Irish whiskey. They're one of the two brands from the Walsh Whiskey Company. Walsh has been around since 1999, started by Bernard and Rosemary Walsh. And I wanted to bring Writer's Tears today because St. Patrick's Day is right around the corner. And I figured we would show something a little bit different than some of the big boys in the market. Writer's Tears really harkens back to the golden age of whiskey, of Irish whiskey, which also happens to be the golden age of Irish writers. As the story goes, writers, to get a little creativity going, and I think a lot of people, to get some creativity going, all it takes is a little bit of Irish whiskey. And when their glass was empty, they would cry tears of whiskey back into their glass to fill it back up again.
It's such a great description. I have always loved the connection between Irish writers and Irish drink, and it's just such a traditional kind of pairing. To the whiskey, this is a copper pot whiskey. What does that actually mean for it? How is it made?
Yeah, so kind of the golden age of whiskey that I was talking about prior to is really a pot still whiskey. And a pot still whiskey is, of course, made on a pot still. 70% of that pot still whiskey I was talking about, and then 30% made from single malt, which is that malted barley also made on a pot still whiskey, hence the name copper pot.
So this is actually a blend of two different kinds of whiskey put together, and one is 100% malted barley, and the other one is a mixture of malted and unmalted barley. This is a super historical style of whiskey, and up until recently there were only two of these available on the market, but now we're kind of in a renaissance of everyone distilling and putting down barrels of stuff that they did 400 years ago, and now they're bringing it back. I am a huge fan of pot still whiskeys because that presence of unmalted barley in your whiskey gives you more body and texture, and just a little more grip without sacrificing any of its ease of drinking. It's quite mellow, easy drinking. On this one, I get vanilla and honey on the nose. There's maybe a little bit of an earthy barley kind of hiding underneath the whole thing. And definitely on the palate, just more of the same with that vanilla and honey.
I get some like bright green apple.
Definitely some apple notes in there. And on the palate, there's just this really nice kind of middle weight. It's nothing super heavy. You're not going to be tasting this tomorrow if you drink too much of it tonight. And I'm just a big fan of this whiskey. What's the second one? It's a double barrel. Does that mean that there's more than one barrel involved in it, or?
Yeah, so the double oak is so it's very similar. The base is, of course, the Writer's Tears copper pot. That's their flagship. So it's aged for at least 7 years, and then it's finished in two different types of barrels before it's blended together again, which is a French oak. It's some cognac casks, and then American oak as well.
Awesome. And cognac casks are a very interesting thing because cognac is, of course, a brandy, just a brandy with a lot of rules of how it gets made, what kind of grapes they use, what kind of barrels they use, and what forest those barrels were harvested from. Using a cognac cask is a really brilliant way to introduce complexity into a whiskey without having to age it for super long. You end up adding more textures and flavors just by finishing your whiskey in something that previously held something else.
And you add a beautiful sweetness to the finish on it, which is like my favorite part about this double oak. I could wax on romantically about double oak forever. It's probably one of my favorite whiskeys in the portfolio. It is, and like instead of that, bright green fruit that we're getting from the copper pot, I get more of like a apple pie, like that spicy.
Yeah, like a little darker sugar note almost.
Absolutely.
I definitely, one of the hallmarks of French oak, and you can, once you learn to pick it out, you can always find it in your whiskey because it's nutmeg and clove and allspice and baking spices, but it's also just a really nice, delicate vanilla that surrounds the whole thing. This is the kind of whiskey that I would pair with a cigar, hopefully in the sunshine out on a porch. And it's just almost like dessert without being anything too heavy. Once again, it's nice and light. It's middle weight as far as that goes. So I'm a huge fan of both of these.
Cool. Thanks, Max. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Smosh.